Hi guys, and welcome back to the Charlie K YouTube channel. I'm currently outside the City ground ahead of Monday night's game against Aston Villa. So after a turbulent week in which Steve Cooper looked like he was going to get sacked and then didn't, what I want to discuss today is probably the biggest talking point of them all, and that's the formation we're going to play. A lot of people have their own ideas. I'm going to analyse it in this video, and we're going to get into all of the details of it. So before we do start the video, please like and subscribe. It means the absolute world, and let's get into it. Yes then guys, I am now back home. I just thought I'd do a little bit of an intro outside of the City ground, a little bit of oomph to start the video, if you will. But what we're going to be talking about today, as I said, is we're going to be talking about Forest's best formation, our starting 11, who should start, who should be dropped, and how I think we're going to progress as a team now that Cooper has signed that contract, and we can all breathe a little bit, I think. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to analyse how other teams line up, how we've lined up previously this season, and sort of figure out where we're going wrong, how we can improve, and which players are going to help us to start climbing up the Premier League table. So to start the video, I'm going to put on this graphic that I've made of how teams have lined up in their last game in the Premier League. So if you see here, we've got a 4-2-3-1 being played by 8 different clubs in the Premier League. I've split these two into sort of slightly more technical and slightly more battling. So you've got the likes of Arsenal, Man United, Chelsea, Man City, who I think are the slightly more technical and are able to play these, against the slightly more battling like your Leeds, your West Ham, your Wolves, your Fulham teams, who take the game with a high energy to other teams, but probably don't play it in quite the same way as the first four. And for me, Forest more likely to sit into this sort of formation if we're playing in similar style to the battling teams. I don't think we have the technical ability to be playing it at the same sort of speed and aggression and just clinical nature that a lot of these top teams have. But there's no reason to say that we can't play it in a similar way to Fulham, in a similar way to Leeds, and in a similar way to West Ham. And the thing that stands out to me about all of these teams is the pace in the wide areas. You look at Bowen, you look at Podence, you look at Aronson, you look at Jack Harrison, for example. It's really built around these pacey wide players and then a bit more of a target man up front. All of these clubs have a target man who they try and get to through pacey wingers, and I feel like that's something that Forest could exploit. So I'm not ruling out the 4-2-3-1, but in the slightly more reserved nature that a lot of these clubs play it, and not the top teams. Moving on now, we've got the 4-3-3 formation. This is played by 5 different clubs in the likes of Villa, Liverpool, Newcastle, Everton and Crystal Palace. And the 4-3-3 I think is very synonymous with that classic Liverpool team, with that front three of Mane, Firmino and Salah, which Forest could emulate with a front three of Emmanuel Dennis, Taiwo Awoniyi and Brennan Johnson. I'm not saying they're going to be quite as good, but we have that front three shape already there. And then when you look in the middle, 3 hard battling centre midfielders. You've got the likes of Freuer, O'Brien, Yates, Mangala. Suddenly, the 4-3-3 seems like quite a good formation to start considering for Forest fans, I think. So we're going to keep that one in mind for a moment and move on to 3-4-2-1. So I'm going to put the 3-4-2-1 of Brighton and the 3-5-2 of Brentford and Spurs into the same category, because I'm pretty sure that's exactly how Forest play right now. It's that sort of 3 at the back, 2 wing backs, 2 CDMs, an attacking mid and 2 strikers. And I'm going to rule this one out straight away because we've tried this in multiple games and it's not worked. 4-4-2, the classic, the sort of no-nonsense football, that's being played by Southampton and Bournemouth currently. And whilst that is working for them, I'm not sure that's how Forest should be setting up. I don't think that allows enough creativity in midfield or enough cover of defence. And I think our central midfield areas are where we're going to win games. So for me, that's too light in a 4-4-2. That's just eliminated as far as Forest is concerned. And finally a 4-1-4-1, which is most commonly sported by Leicester. They did this against Forest and they did this against Bournemouth. And this could work for Forest because I think it allows the cover of defence that we need with that 1 CDM in front. Then it has the 4 more attacking midfielders with the 2 centre mids, the wingers, with all of these probably supporting Awoniyi, who played in a similar formation at Union Berlin. So whilst this one would probably work, I'm not going to talk about this too much because I don't know enough about it, and personally I still don't think the cover of 1 player in front of the defence is good for Forest. I feel like there needs to be a compact unit and a bit more of a team-based game. But for me, the final 2 that we can be considering here are the 4-3-3 and the 4-2-3-1. And drum roll please, I'm going to go for the 4-3-3. It's very different and it's probably a little bit more of a classical, sort of a dying art, but I think we can nail this. And here's why. So obviously at the back we're going to go for Dean Henderson, fantastic player. Don't think he's done too much wrong in a Forest shirt. However, I do think he can be beaten quite easily from long shots. I think if you look at the majority of goals we seem to be conceding, a lot of them are from far out, and you could possibly argue that yeah, they're just worldies and we're just getting a bit unlucky with that. But I thought the same when he was at Man United, and it was the only complaint I had about him. he seems to be planted when these long shots come in. I'm not sure his reactions are quite as good as possibly we thought they were originally. Obviously, I think in the box there aren't many better. I think he's very commanding of his area. Outside of it, he looks a little bit vulnerable. But I think we'll stick with Dean Henderson for now. I don't see any other replacement. I know Hennessy's good for Wales. I don't think he's quite at the level of Henderson. So for me, Dean Henderson, surefire, is our number one. And we're going to move on to the back four, and that feels weird saying that about Forest. But obviously for me, Moussa Niakhaté is the one man in this entire four. When fit, and I think he will be for the Villa game, judging from photos for training, has to start for me. Moussa Niakhaté is everything good about Forest defence, and we saw that in the first few games of the season before his injury. A commanding presence who has pace, strength, and the drive to go forward. Massive fan of Moussa Niakhaté, and I think he allows possibly a few more mistakes from our more accident-prone centre-backs like Worrell and Steve Cook. And despite the fact that you will never beat McKenna, I do think Joe Worrell should be given his place in the starting 11 once again. And this is only if Moussa Niakhaté plays, because I feel like that relationship that they could build could be a really, really promising one. With Niakhaté's pace, we're sort of cancelling out the accidents that Worrell is occasionally prone to, and then just left with a very, very good defender. In terms of tackling, in terms of positioning, his never say die attitude and his never give up. You look at that Leicester tackle with the head last season, for example. This man bleeds Nottingham Forest, and if there's one player that can carry that message through this team and sort of galvanise this squad into a bit more of a team, a unit, then I do think we need Joe Worrell in the starting 11. And maybe controversial, but that's what I'm going to go for. So my two centre-backs, Moussa Niakhaté and Joe Worrell. And now we're going to move on to right-back. And this, for me, is up for debate quite a little bit here. And I'm going to say it now. I don't think it should be Nico Williams. He's dropped off a little bit. He definitely has dropped off a little bit, and possibly showing now why Fulham didn't go all in for him in the summer. I don't think he's awful. But I think we have better. And the two players I think are better are Guillaume Biancone and Serge Aurier. Who I'm going to go for here is Biancone. Obviously, Cooper's seen more of him in training, and maybe that's the reason he's not starting. But if you look at pre-season and you look at his cameo against Man City, the man's not put a foot wrong. He was man of the match in the majority of the pre-season games. Man City, he shored up a very shaky defence in a game where we were all over the place. I thought he came on and added a calming presence that we needed. So yeah, I don't see the problem in Biancone. I think possibly in the future, with a bit more match fitness, I'd like to see Aurier start. I think he put a very good performance in the second half of the Leicester game. I think both of them have the ability and are probably more defensively minded than Nico Williams is. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that later, because I do think Williams can fit into this team still, possibly, but just not in right back. So now we're going to go over to the left back position, and for right now, it's between Renan Lodi and Harry Toffolo. When Omar Richards comes back, I think he starts. I've not been impressed with Lodi, I have to say. So I'm going to go for Toffolo. I know he made a few mistakes in that Newcastle game, and there was a little bit of shakiness against West Ham. But all in all, a fantastic player who didn't really put too much of a foot wrong when he did start, and I think was very harshly dropped following the arrival of Renan Lodi. So I'd like to see Toffolo get another chance. I think there are a number of factors that coincide our drop in form. Harry Toffolo being removed from the squad could be one of those. It does coincide. It may just be one of the things that has happened, not really affected it too much. But I'd like to see Toffolo start against Aston Villa, and I think he should, and I think he will. So there's the back four. We've got left back Toffolo, centre backs Niakhaté and Worrell, and the right back Guillaume Biancone. Moving on to the midfield three now, and possibly the biggest area for debate, we have got the likes of Yates, Kouyaté, O'Brien, Freuler, Mangala, Lingard, Gibbs-White. It's a massive talent that you've got to squash into three positions, and I'm going to try and do that. I do think that we should be playing with two slightly deeper, still almost aligned, but two slightly deeper midfielders, and one probably still central mid, not attacking. And for that reason, I'm going to go for Mangala and O'Brien as CDMs, and I'm going to go for Gibbs-White as the slightly more attacking, still very central midfielder. I'd allow him some sort of creative license, because I think he's at his best when he does that and has the confidence to do that. But I'd like to see him do a little bit more defensive work right now. But for me, the other two, the CDMs with O'Brien and Mangala, I think Freuler can maybe be a little bit unlucky not to get there, because his performances for Switzerland in the international break were fantastic. But in a Forest shirt, I'm not sure he's currently showing exactly what he can do. Yates, again, another guy I'd bring on off the bench. I think he bleeds Forest through and through, and as we saw in the Leicester game, adds a bit of passion, a bit of urgency, a bit of just, get into them, and that's what we need in certain games. But in terms of technical ability and outplaying teams with football, which is what Steve Cooper is going to want to do, I do think Mangala and O'Brien are the two to do that for us. Gibbs-White against Lingard is probably the attacking mid debate we have there, but I do think Gibbs-White provides more than Lingard does. So Lingard will probably, for me, make cameos in the second half. That's how I would do it. Probably bring him on in the 60th minute. Maybe for one of the wingers, actually, and then move Gibbs-White onto the wings because I know he can play there. So Lingard, for me, doesn't start. I think we have Gibbs-White in the midfield. The midfield three for me, therefore, O'Brien, Mangala, Gibbs-White slightly ahead of them. And now the front three, which consists of a striker, a left winger and a right winger. And I'm going to stick with Aranyi for now because I do think he's showing glimpses of the player that we know he can be and we saw in the Bundesliga. And I think more game time, more faith shown in that player. We've got a gem there, a very, very uncut gem. Definitely one that we can turn into a diamond for sure. So for me, Aranyi, once he gets a little bit more confidence, and I think with this midfield three, we're able to play to his strengths, him in a little bit more as opposed to playing over the top, which I think if you look at the highlights when he was at Union Berlin, most of his goals came from a bit more of a through ball position, not sort of aerial target man, because he is big, and he'll bully players, but when he has the ball at his feet. Aranyi, for me, has to start. I do think Sam Surridge has a shout now. I really think Surridge has a shout because I think a lot of those chances that Aranyi did miss against Leicester, Surridge would have scored. Surridge would have put those in. We saw last season that he is a fantastic finisher and has the capability to finish. So for me, Surridge probably is on the verge of taking Aranyi's place. But I'm going to stick with Aranyi for now. Emmanuel Dennis is probably notable by his absence here, but bear with me because he's going to be my left wing choice. And I think we saw when he played for Watford, a lot of Dennis's best football comes when he plays on the left side. He's got the pace and he's got the energy, but he doesn't quite have the battling nature, I think, that a top striker in the Premier League has to have. So for me, playing him on the wing suits him perfectly, and it allows, with his pace, as long as he's a bit more disciplined and a bit more controlled, he then provides support to Harry Toffolo and the left side midfielder, which is most likely going to be Lewis O'Brien. So he can cover and he can attack, and I think O'Brien and Toffolo and their communication on that left side bring Dennis into that as well. I feel like there's cover, there's communication, and hopefully a bit of joy down that left side. I do think that is where we can really, really exploit teams, because I think that three there can build a really good connection. And now moving on to the right wing debate, and this is one of three players. So first of all, Brennan Johnson is the obvious one, isn't he? But tell me, has Johnson done enough? And I know he scored twice, but has he done enough to start for Forest right now? He has the potential to be an absolute world beater and probably has the highest ceiling within this squad. But I'm not sure he deserves to start on current form. And there are two players that I would like to see come in and try and take his place in there. And this is one, hypothetically, if you want to keep Lingard in the squad, you can move Gibbs-White to the right wing. And he's played there before, played there well. And I'd like to see what he can do because he's creative, he's fast, he's strong, and he could probably mimic a sort of Adama Traore, Michael Antonio figure on the wings. If Johnson isn't playing up to his standards and you want to play Lingard, bring Morgan Gibbs-White onto the right. But I do then think you lose a little bit of the creative output in the middle and the sort of controlling, sort of pulling the strings that Gibbs-White is capable of doing when he plays in a more central role. So for me, that's not the ideal. I'd like to see Nico Williams play in a more attacking role. And if you look at the stats, I think they back my point here. He is the most creative player, the most aggressive player, and to be honest, I would say one of the best on the ball that Forest have. His crossing ability is fantastic, which when you have a big man like Aranyi, I feel like a lot of those crosses from Williams in a more advanced position are going to meet their target. So for me, currently, I'd probably be tempted to drop Brennan Johnson and attempt to play Nico Williams on the wing, and that is probably my most controversial opinion in this entire video. I'm probably going to get slated for it. Hopefully you can see my logic. Let me know if you can't, if I'm being an idiot. But that's my opinion. So that is my ideal 11 for who I probably don't think will play, but who I think should play against Aston Villa. So to recap, that is Dean Henderson in goal, Moussa Niakate and Joe Worrell as centre-backs, right back Gillian Biancone, left back Harry Toffolo, three in midfield of O'Brien, Mangala and Morgan Gibbs-White, a right winger of Nico Williams, left winger Emmanuel Dennis, and up front Taiwo Awoniyi, who could be interchangeable for Sam Surridge. The more I think about it, the more I kind of want Surridge to play. But I'm going to stick with Awoniyi for now. Yeah, that's my opinion. Leave yours in the comments. Let me know who you think should be in the starting 11. I always read all the comments, so it is great to hear from you guys. I love hearing your opinions. Talk to me on Twitter or Instagram, or the links are in my bio. I can't stress enough that the feedback and the conversations that were coming from the community in the comments of the last video, how good they were to hear. It meant a lot, so feel free to leave another one. If not, no worries. Have a nice day. Yeah, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Come on, you Reds.